Hi, I'm Brian, and thanks for joining in. Do you remember when you were young that you formed opinions quickly and that they were very important to you because they were your opinions? And if anybody wanted to challenge your opinions, which were based on naivety and ignorance and innocence, then what you did was you got out a bucket of withering sarcasm and just poured it all over the top of them and put them in their place. Because what you were absolutely really trying to do was to show everybody or to hide your ignorance, your naivety, and you didn't want to actually say, I don't get this. I don't understand. I could be wrong. Well, I absolutely hated this album when it came out. I thought it was a betrayal of everything that Midnight Oil had worked so hard to achieve. And there I was, and I would tell anybody who liked this album how bad it was, and I would challenge them. I'd use sarcasm, and now I feel like a bit of a doofus. I feel like I almost need to go to a 12-step program to apologize to everybody who I may have offended because this album was really good. It came out in October of 1984, and it's on Columbia, and that is one of the absolute ugliest album covers I have ever seen. But I guess that's the point. From artist Sunisha Kimura, and it was recorded in Japan as well. The lovely inner sleeve here with the lyrics and more variations on that theme of nuclear Armageddon and destruction. And the album also looks great too. And we're on Columbia. Now, it's interesting that this album would come out at this point because it came out just before the lead singer, Peter Garrett, was going to stand for Parliament as part of the Nuclear Disarmament Party. And that was happening in December of 1984. And if you want really good background for that, I really can recommend the documentary. I think it's called Michael Midnight Oil 1984, and it's on streaming services. And it's a really good overview of not only the entire band, but and their longevity, if you like, but that in particular. I think there's another documentary that's just come out. Anyway, I think it was the first Midnight Oil album to go to number one in this country, which really amazed me. And it was interesting because their previous album, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, was still on the charts when they released this one. There was a great concert held on Goat Island in 1985, January, I want to say, 1985, where Midnight Oil performed a, a great gig. But I think 6 of the songs came from Red Sails on the Sunset. And you got tickets to go and see that. I was celebrating Triple J's 10-year anniversary or something like that. Have I got it? 10-year anniversary. You can see it on YouTube. Just put Midnight Oil, Goat Island, January 85, and you'll find it. And the tickets, a lot of the tickets, I think all of the tickets were given away. And a couple of my friends, George and Amanda, hi guys, from back in the day, I haven't seen them in 40 years, but still, hi George, hi Amanda. They were at that performance. I was so jealous. And my God. And you know what? The songs that were played off this album sounded just as good as the other songs, but no, I wouldn't accept it. Produced again by Nick Launay, Red Sails in the Sunset, and we've got Peter Garrett on vocals. We've got Peter Gifford on bass. We've got Rob Hirst on drums and lead vocals, importantly, and then we've got the guitar engine room of Jim Moginie and Martin Rotsey there as well, and we get Charlie McMahon who comes on the didge. One of the tracks also. It was named after a pop song from the 1930s and the idea of sailing off into the sunset, but this time the sails are on fire. So let me reappraise this album and let me try and think about whether it belongs right up the pantheon of Oil's albums or whether it's just a little bit better than I thought or whether it's a stinker. We'll see. Let's check it out. So you can imagine why I felt a little bit discombobulated when this album came out, because the first song is When the Generals Talk, and it's a sort of a funky shuffle. It's almost disco in places, and it features Rob Hirst, the drummer, on lead vocals. And it's an ironic satire of the corruption that exists within politicians and corporations. To quote Richard III, why I can smile and murder whilst I smile. And there are those gated drums again, but there's a sparsity to them, and it's a bit jarring. Gifford on the bass just grounds it out for me, though. And it's a cool riff, sounds very dry. Yeah. And we almost a rap section in the middle when Pete comes back and goes into that long rap, which reminds me a lot of Blondie's Rapture rap as well. the repetition of the snare drum I find a little bit annoying throughout this song, and I still don't know whether I love it or not. I don't think I'm ever going to get to that loving sense, but it's a lot better than I thought. It's more than just a disco song. And then we move on to the next song, which is a great stomper, and it's the best of both worlds. Love those descending chords. I mean, they work nearly everywhere. They work on All Along the Watchtower. Why won't they work here? It's the second single off the album, but it didn't chart. What's going on? But this is exactly what I wanted at the time. I wanted a little bit of excitement. I wanted ferocity from my band, from my Midnight Oil, and it's a great riff with the horns chiming in as well. And Pete is on fire, and they're so confident when he comes in, going, "You say times are tough. You got the best of both worlds." I love Jim's harmonics squealing on the guitar all over this song, and that slow section in the middle was a bit jarring for me. Etc. I'm not sure about that, but now, when I listen to it, I go, well, the chorus is coming back, or a guitar solo is coming back. And we're going to energize. It's just like a break. Everybody can take a break occasionally, and then we come back in. And did it need to go twice? I doubt it, but still, I love that machine gun. The machine gun one note solo that's played at the end, where it's going, you say, you got the best of. It's a really cool moment. Sleep is the next song, and ironically, because it's called Sleep, I think there's a bit of a come down as we get into this. We get into this song, and we've got the steel string acoustic guitars, which is sort of foreshadowing their use not only on this album, more of their use than was on 10 to 1, but more use in the future albums as well. There's a musical calm that's descended, and it allows us then to focus on those people who have been disenfranchised in our society. It's a great bass line from Gifford as well, and it's a perfectly fine song. But I don't know, I just get stuck into comparing this album with other albums. And the third track here, we've got Sleep, and on 10 to 1, we had Short Memory, which is a much bigger song, much more of a killer song, much more of a pertinent song. Still, what the hell? Again, it's a touch long for me. Maybe one chorus, again, too heavy. Too many, should I say. But there's certainly nothing wrong with it. Minutes to Midnight is the next song, and that didn't grab me when I first heard it much at all, and it still doesn't grab me. Maybe it's because of those acoustic guitars, but there's nothing wrong with the acoustic guitars. It's the fact that they're in the hands of Martin and Jim. That's the thing. But it does, again, sound like a band in transition. We've gone through that, and bands have to evolve. I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about bands have to evolve for their fans. They have to evolve for themselves. Otherwise, we're just, I don't know. I mean, AC/DC didn't have to evolve, but that's the exception, which maybe disproves the rule in many ways. So Minutes to Midnight, we've got this idea of the doomsday clock, and how I think at the time that it was, there's a pun, I think at the time it was like 3 minutes away from midnight, and now I think it's in 2025, it's less than a minute away. There's a moment of beauty in there, and I think, is that a 12-string solo? And this is the section I just want to huddle in. This is a beautiful section. I could have much more of this, and it gets better, this song, the longer that it goes. Jimmy Sharman's Boxes is the next song that comes up, and right from the beginning, da 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 da, that guitar line, da 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 da. Da, 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 da. And we've got the floor toms being used, I believe, by Rob, and it just creates such an amazing opening. And it's got that incredible, as I said, that evocative guitar riff. Great interplay by Jim and Martin here. Check it out. Check out this song on the Goat Island gig. You will not be disappointed. Subdued vocals to start, and then we come up to the chorus. Why are we fighting for this? Why are you paying for this? You pay to see me fall like shrapnel to the floor. And it's the voice of the Indigenous boxer, who's part of may potentially being exploited by Jimmy Sharman here, that they have to fight so often, and potentially from town to town to town. It was only much later, maybe in the 1970s, where they sort of went out of business because they were told that their boxers could not fight any more than once a week. So there was definitely an issue of care here at this point. So, I mean, you can look into Jimmy Sharman's boxing circus tent, whatever it was, where these guys would turn up at towns and they would challenge anybody to fight them. Uh, but that is an incredible chorus that, why are we fighting for this? Reminds me a lot of Armistice Day in many ways as well. I feel the song, once again, this is becoming a pattern, goes on for 90 seconds too long. I think it's incredible up to that point, but then we go to the absolutely bombastic finish on this song. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's like playing on 11 for just too long. It had to get up to a point, but I could have just finished on the chorus. But that's just me. Ah. And we finish off the side with a song by Rob called Bakerman, which is like carnival music. It's sort of like the winding down of the circus of Jimmy Sharman's boxes. Um, and I really like it. I think it's reverse guitar that's being used from the melody of one of the songs. I'm not sure which song it is, but you can tell me if you know what it is. And I think it's an appropriate addendum just to finish off that side of the music and maybe add or support or bring us down from Jimmy Sharman's boxes back to out to the end of side one. So now we come over to the problematic side two, because back in the day when I was forming those withering arguments to anybody who would challenge my opinion that this was a bad album, when I was doing that, I listened to side one about 90% of the time and side two about 10% of the time. So 9 plays of side one before I flipped it over. Now, that may have had something to do with the fact that I didn't really like side one at the time, but I was very ignorant of what was going. And if anybody really wanted to put me down and they had the knowledge, they would have just gone to side two. It starts off with Who Can Stand in the Way? And I like the reverse guitars that start this and the atmosphere that is created with the bells. There's a great groove which sounds a lot like Put Down That Weapon, or as Ostentatious would sing, Put Down That Stubby. And those synth stabs in the middle are still very jarring to me. They're jam, jam, or they're at the beginning and throughout the song. But you can understand why Midnight Oil were doing this, because they're in the 80s now. And so all of a sudden, it's like being in the 60s and early 70s. You've got all these effects pedals. You want to use what instruments are available to you. And so maybe this is them experimenting a little in the studio. It was jarring for me at the time, but I understand it much more now from 30 years onward. They could have stayed in their comfort zone, but they were risking it. And there's that great line, who can stand in the way when there's a dollar to be made? And then those reverse guitars come out and they remind me a lot of Surfing with a Spoon in that riff. I've got to be a little bit careful here because I don't want it to come across as that my point is that if it reminds me of something that appeared on the previous 5 Midnight Oil albums, then that makes it a good thing. If they're dipping into that gene pool and their DNA, then I'm happy. I suppose I am a little bit, but I don't want to detract from the fact that they're making these excursions into areas that they haven't been before. And sometimes it's a little bit comforting to be supported on this ride. And that continues on to with Kosciusko. And what we have is Rob on lead vocals, and we've got the engine room with that rhythm section pounding through with layers of guitar supporting it. And it's dipping very heavily, for in my judgment, to the US Forces riff and that sort of gene pull, especially with a coda at the end. And that's a good thing. I don't know, it fills me full of confidence. The drums really cut through these layers of guitar as well. And the sound of the guitars, by the way, is absolutely gnarly. That moves us on to Helps Me, Helps You, a real sing-along this song. And this is where we have the didge of Charlie McMahon on here. And it begins and it sets a really wide mood and atmosphere. And it switches into a rockabilly vibe and it's quite open. This song is championing the issue of land rights in Australia. Always was, always will be. And there's a great chorus, which is a sing-along, which says, generosity helps me, helps you. I love the guitar picking throughout, and at the end where there's a dissonant mood of warning takes over from this major key song. So we've moved into a situation where we've got a sense of celebration with us all joining together in a condemnation of the land rights issue and the support for, should we say, support for Indigenous people in this country and their land rights. But there's a sense of the battle is really yet to come, and there's a paranoia here, and in this case, that comes through on the sound of the guitar. Harrisburg is up now, and this is a song which echoes the sense of nuclear Armageddon as well, because Harrisburg is the town nearest where the 3 Mile Island nuclear disaster occurred. Musically, it's a bit of a tribute to the 80s with the breathing sound of the ha, 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 all the way through it, supported by the synths. And this is like an open letter to politicians and corporations saying the time has come that we now I'm doing it myself with the time has come, a fact's a fact, give it back, down, down, down. I can't name it. Beds are burning. There we go. Yeah, that idea, this open letter to politicians and corporations, that nuclear Armageddon is not as far away as we think, and that links back to the Minutes to Midnight album. And this was 40 years ago, and the message still rings very true today. And it's a very deliberate dirge. It's almost musically prefacing or predicting the end of mankind unless we do something, and that's reinforced by the low bass on the synth. And it's really strong. It becomes like almost like a death nail in this coffin, which you'll never be able to pull it out. Once that death nail goes in, you can't pull it out again. And from this point on, we go into this sort of non-oils feel, this really experimental side to them, which I completely missed in 1984, that's for sure. But to me, nowadays, this seems to be like the most exciting part of the album. And it's kind of interesting as well. I mean, if you took the vocals away, would you know which band was playing? And this goes into bells and horns in the back of Beyond. And Pete is riffing on this sort of like a stream of consciousness that's occurring. And then we get these xylophone chimes. And they're really taking on board musical stylings from the 1980s, which were a bit foreign to the Oils at the time. And particularly the new wave move. I'd almost direct people to this song as a first point of call in enjoying this record. We've got Rob's thunderous drums entering throughout this, and the whole thing goes into overdrive with this super cool gothic style lead, I assume by Jim, because it's got those elements of surf guitar in there as well. And then the banshees start wailing as well, and then the song just collapses or dissolves into the next track. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And that song is Shipyards of New Zealand. And this is where things start to get really experimental and interesting and exciting. We start with these xylophone bells, if that's what, I'm not quite sure. And then and that's sort of blended in with this sort of synthesizer chorus of female voices. I'm not sure whether they're sung or whether it is coming out of a synthesizer. Then Pete sings over the top, moving west into the sunset. We found the sunset of our lives. Then it pivots almost into this industrial sound section. So we're getting elements of new wave, we're getting elements of post-punk, and it builds to a crescendo with Pete singing, I can get lost, I can get confused, something's misplaced, maybe for good. And the song finishes in this epic grandeur with the guitars feedbacking. Those guitar notes are ringing out. And, you know, I can really picture them in being in the studio, imagining that this is the last song, and they're there with Nick Launay, and the sort of the particles of this Armageddon sort of start to dissolve from the roof or fall from the roof and hit the ground, like we've been through it, this end of the world experience. And the six of them just looking at each other and saying, we've really nailed something here. This is pretty amazing. And I never would have thought that I would have thought this all those years ago. Still, I was only 19, but I should have known better. And that's where it is. You know, I should have known when I first became a fan of Midnight Oil that they weren't going to keep playing Head Injuries forever. In fact, the longer they went, they didn't play they played a couple of songs of it regularly live, but not a whole lot of others. And that they were going to evolve in another way, much like they went from Head Injuries to Place Without a Postcard, from Place Without a Postcard to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that idea that I didn't like what they were doing and I was offended by it, or I didn't understand it, I should have just swallowed that and said, I'm going with you. You're a great band. The wisdom of maturity in hindsight, I suppose. Anyway, so that's my deep dive into Red Sails in the Sunset. Yeah, it's got me. I'm really, really thrilled and pleased that I picked up a copy of this just on a whim, that I thought maybe I've overlooked this, and it gave me so much pleasure. And reminding you that if music of any size, shape, sound, or sails in the sunset floats your boat, then who am I to argue with your opinion? I hope you've enjoyed coming with me on this journey throughout this rediscovery, if you like, this adventure. And if you'd like to check out any other of my videos, they're just over there, and you might find something that's of interest to you, including a review of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But until we see each other again, and I hope that's soon, I hope you're doing really well, staying cool, and bye now.